Welcome to lucky number 13, Viper Voices. Today joined by Colton Sparrow, a man of many memories when it comes to the Vernon Vipers, but a man who's got a whole lot more to offer than just those experiences. Colton Sparrow, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, glad to be here, Graham. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's sort of dive right into it. I mean, these podcasts have been fun to do. We get to learn a little bit more about you. And I mean, a lot of Vernon fans know you for so many different reasons, but a lot of it has to do with the 4 years that you spent in Vernon. But there are pieces before that, pieces after that. And it's really cool to get an opportunity to go down memory lane. So we'll sort of dive in if that works for you.
You got it. Yeah, sounds good.
Minor hockey in Vernon. Lots of guys that we've talked to already who have Vernon backgrounds, the Dave Robinsons, the Connor Merritts, the Jagger Williamsons. They all love playing minor hockey in and around the area. What was the experience like for you?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. We had a great 93 group too in the Vernon area. So that made the memories even better. We won some great tournaments and some league plays and provincials, and so a lot of fun. Yeah, I played to start out. My first ever organized hockey season, I played out of Lumbee minor hockey, based on the fact that my best friend at the time, Tanner Burns, was there. So we found a way to get me in that organization, anyways. But I think I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and I was playing with 12-year-olds because we didn't have enough kids my age on that team. So that was my first year, and then I went and played my first year of initiation hockey in Vernon. So I think that team was called the Far West Blues, if I can remember, and I think I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And those days were it was just awesome to be on the ice. I fell in love with the game really early, so I loved it since the day I could walk. I was on skates. So. Some great minor hockey teams. Pee Wee in particular, we had an awesome Pee Wee team. We won the Winter Carnival tournament my second year Pee Wee, so that was really cool. What year would that be? 2005, 2006? But the reason that was so special for me was my dad was on the committee for that Pee Wee tournament, and he had actually played and won that tournament when he was that age. I think it was 1971 maybe. He won that tournament. So we have a thing at my house, at my parents' house, a plaque where his trophy and my trophy side by side from that tournament. So that was a great memory for me, just to begin the hockey journey that I went on. Yeah.
Well, it's pretty crazy because there's sort of a spot in a young man's life or young woman's life where they're deciding what they want to do. Whether, I'm sure there's sort of a fork in the road where you know that A, you have to probably take it a lot more seriously. B, you have to condition yourself and become the athlete, nutrition, all of those sorts of things. And then there are the people who they love the game, but they're not as committed. At what point, or was there a point where you thought, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to spend my time, and I'm going to commit to it full time. Obviously, on your list, 07-08, you're a part of the Tier 1 Vernon Vipers, and then you go on to the Okanagan Rockets. So maybe take us a year before that where you're thinking, okay, I can make a go out of this and try play some junior.
Yeah, absolutely. Just thinking back on it, I mean, I think for me, I think I was so obsessed with the game that it almost wasn't really an option otherwise for me. I just, as a kid, like if you go to my parents' house in Vernon there on Sarson's Road, like the basement, we call it the rec room. And like I had a net on one end, net on the other. My dad put up, plywood so I could rip pucks. And I mean, I'd be down there every day after school. I was just obsessed with the game. So that carried me throughout minor hockey days. When it started to get a little more serious, I remember, when we really started to train, Sam Mowat, who's a guy in town. I think he does a couple academies in town, or he's well known in the hockey community. And his son Max was my age, and they moved into town from Ontario, and I think that was in Bantam. And I think that's kind of when I realized that it was going to take a little bit more. We started to train and work out, and I started getting some, conversations with, a couple Western League teams approached me, like we had talked about, Chilliwack Bruins when they were still a team. So, people start talking about the future in junior hockey and this and that, and you're just kind of getting introduced to it. And back then, I don't think they really prepped kids overly well for certain choices. Like maybe I just missed it. I don't know, but I was pretty blind to what my options were. I was kind of just like I played the game because I loved it, right? And that's all I knew. But it started getting a little more serious then, and then we started training, and then this and that, and that Bantam year was a big year. We had a really strong group. I think there was maybe 5 Western League picks off that team, which is pretty good for Vernon minor hockey, and I wasn't one of them. So I remember that stinging a little bit. I remember watching the Western League draft. I think I was in math class, like grade 9 or something like that, and I watched my name, just keep getting skipped on. And there was Tanner Burns, Zach McPhee, Brock McDonald, and Brady Brassard, I think, all went in the Western League draft off that team. So, I was pretty bummed to not go in that draft, but I knew I was going to stick with it. I had no idea whether junior A Western League. I was just going to go to any camp I could and see what happens. And that's kind of what I did. That first year major midget that you talked about was a big year for me. I think that's when I really turned a corner on whether I was going to be able to make anything out of it. I think I put on, 20, 30 pounds that season, just training. That was the first year I really trained before that first year midget. Cause that midget age group, you're moving into some bigger boys, right? When you're 15 years old. So I put on a little bit of weight. I was always a good skater. I ended up, that season was an interesting season because I got released from that Okanagan Rockets team as a first year at the start of the year, but I was like the very last cut. I was there till the season started and they let me go. So then I came back and played midget AAA in Vernon for about a month and a half. And then maybe not even that long, I got a call back from the Okanagan Rockets coach, Dave Dupas, and they had a guy have a season-ending knee injury. So they needed a forward, and they asked. And at that time, I wanted to be loyal to my AAA team in Vernon because it was an awesome group. Jason Casper was coaching us, and we had a tournament in Colorado and things going on. So I didn't really want to leave that team. I was having a lot of fun. So I was playing for about probably a month or two. I was playing on both teams. Like I was playing with the OK Rockets. I remember one weekend, no joke, I'll share a funny story. We had our home tournament, midget AAAs. It's been in November probably. And I was going back and forth. And there was one game where I honest to God, I played in the morning in Vernon. I kept my gear on. My parents drove me to Kelowna. I played a 10 a.m. game with the OK Rockets in the major midget. And then I managed to take my gear off after that, but I went back and played in a final later that day for the AAA. So I played 3 games. And at that level, you can do that when you're a kid, but at that level, that's 3 of those games is pretty taxing on the body. So yeah, I can't even think about doing that these days, but I did it then. So that was an awesome year. Once I think by Christmas time, I was full on with the OK Rockets, and I learned a lot that year. I think that was the year I really figured I could make the turn and play some junior hockey because I played with some awesome players on that team. Cody Beach, Brandon Redschlag, some really good players. And I knew then that was what I wanted to do. I think Cody Beach came back from the Western League that year, and you could tell he was right there. And I was like, you know what, I can play with this guy. I can go ahead and do this. So that was kind of my turning point that year.
An interesting year after. You get 40 games in with the Rockets as a 16-year-old. You get 17 points in 40 games. You get a cup of coffee with the North Okanagan Knights, which is just in my backyard. You get 5 games in with junior beer. You sort of mentioned it and you glossed over it. Let's go back into it. Yeah. Not being sure what your decision is going to be and the benefits to going either league. This is a question I ask a lot because the answer fascinates me. The fork in the road now, because once you play one exhibition game, You take one
Right.
step on the ice in an exhibition game, your NCAA eligibility is essentially gone, and it's a
Right.
heck of a process to get it back. Were you ever sort of, not getting drafted, were you ever sort of wooed by that, or did you eventually sort of get some advisement that, once you do that, that's fine, but these are the ramifications from it?
Right. And you know what? In my case, and I think this is why, like, what I do now, I do athletic counseling, and um, through Training House, Rhonda Cat Vernon there, and I work with some of her athletes and stuff like that. And what I always now I spend more time on that topic with younger guys, because to be completely honest with you, I didn't know the ramifications, and I was relatively blind in that sense. Um, I don't remember consciously thinking like, I need to stop going, pursuing the Western League because I want to go NCAA. I don't think I ever had that in my mind then. It just honestly worked out well for me that a Western League team didn't want me bad enough to uh, put me in any games or anything. But I went to camps. Like I said, I went to Chilliwack's camp. I think leading into that first year midget, I think I went to that camp, and then second year midget, I went to the Blazers camp, Kamloops Blazers, and I was shortlisted, or I was listed by them at the time. So I was kind of on their radar, but they just got rid of me after camp and didn't put me in any games. But I had friends go through that process. Max Moen in particular played games for the Blazers that year, and then of course came back and played on the Vipers with me for a few seasons and had no eligibility because he played those Western League games, right? So I seen it happen, but I wasn't, like I said, consciously making those decisions, which I wish I would have known at the time. It just worked out well for me that, the path I went on was kind of the right one. So, that second year major midget, again, that was kind of a choice I had to make with junior B or major midget. The Norfolk Knights had contacted me. Eddie Johnstone, I think at the time, was the coach, and my dad knows him really well from way back in the day. So he called my dad and said, "Hey, like, would your kid be interested in playing that year?" So I remember that decision because I remember thinking, is it smarter to go play junior? I was always undersized. I was never a big kid. So I thought maybe another year developing in midget was the right play at 16. Cause I mean, that wasn't really back in the day, but I mean, at that time there was some pretty tough dudes in that junior B league. From what I remember, cause like you said, I played 5 games, and I remember that first game, we were in Sycamoose, I think. And that was the first time I ever seen a hockey fight, like close up and personal. And I was like, holy man, like these guys can go. So that was a tough league back then, really tough league. I think it's changed a lot now, and it's more about speed and, playing a faster pace, and it's kind of on pace more with the hockey we see nowadays. But there was still some pretty good goons in the league back then. So went and played major midget for a year or another year. And like you said, I was never going to be a point getter. I think I knew that. I think I made my difference by being, tenacious and going after the puck and making space for my line mates and just playing hard and playing in all areas of the rink. So that was a really good year for me, I think, for confidence. Mishko Antison was the coach there, and he really liked me. I think from the first day of camp, he said, like, I want you to be my go-to guy this year. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence that year. And that's kind of how the whole thing, Jason Williamson, Mark Ferner would have watched me that season quite a bit. So that's when I got on the radar with the Vipers, and I guess the rest is kind of history. So.
Not a bad team to be on for your rookie season. So you're 17 years old. You get recruited by the Vipers. I mean, Before we talk about the season, how exciting was it? I mean, you're a hometown guy. You get recruited. You've done clearly enough to get on their radar. And at the time, they'd won back-to-back national championships. So the caliber of the players that are rolling through there, pretty significant. I mean, for you, what did it feel like to get the call and realize that they wanted you to be on the team?
Yeah. So again, I got a good story that goes along with that. Like you said, I mean, I grew up, you know, like that jersey you got behind you there, like that 99 team. And like, I mean, I was obsessed. I was, you know, like you're a young guy probably, right? Like just, I was obsessed with the team. I remember I got to carry the flag for them at during warm-ups in the old Civic Arena, like in '99. I would have been like 6 years old. So, you know, it was always Vipers, right? I don't know if I ever, you know, I think that's when I started to realize like, hey, like this could be a real thing. Mark Ferner contacted me in the summer. It was relatively late in the summer, so I was already kind of making plans. I knew I wanted to make the jump, and I figured I could play in the BCHL at that point. So Alberni Valley Bulldogs were very interested, and Merritt Centennials at the time were the two teams that I was on the phone with a lot. Leaning towards Alberni Valley probably in like June, July, I think. And then I got the call from Mark Ferner. And, you know, at that time, you know, I don't think I had full confidence in myself and my ability. And of course, with the two teams that had just the 2 years prior, right? Like I went to all those games. I watched those teams. And I mean, when you're watching that kind of hockey, it's a little bit intimidating. You're like, you know, can I play at that level with that caliber of team? So like you said, but you know what? Ferner called me, and the way that he went about it was awesome. And I have like the utmost respect for Mark Ferner because I just think the way that he handles things and had handled things at the time. You know, he gave it to me straight up. You know, he said, we watched you all year. We like the way you play. We have a lot of players coming in, and he said, I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's probably about 7 or 8 guys in your caliber that are competing for about one spot, maybe 1 or 2 spots is how he put it. So, you know, I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, that's, you know, I got a guarantee in Alberni Valley. They really like me. They really want me. They want me, you know, in the lineup every night. Or I have a, you know, 1 in 8 chance of kind of cracking the Vipers lineup. So to a kid who's growing up obsessed with the Vipers, it was I remember though thinking a lot in that couple months leading up to the season. But you know, I was working hard. I was training as hard as I could, and you know, there was a point I think in the summer I was at the OTR, and you know, Ferner was there because I think his son Mac was on the ice with me possibly, and that was kind of the turning point. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna crack this team. I'm gonna put all my eggs in this basket and go for it. So I called him and said, yeah, I'd love to come to camp. I love the opportunity. And yeah, so when I got to camp, it was just, I just did everything I could. And that's the story I was going to tell was right towards the end of, it was really coming down to the wire. There was me and a couple other guys still hanging on to a spot, some preseason games, this and that. And when he finally made the final cut, he brought me into the office, Mark and Jason. And the whole time the interview was going, I've shared this story lots because it's pretty funny and it just kind of speaks to the way Mark's character is. But the whole interview, he's like leading the other way, you know, like, you know, you tried your best, you know, there was lots of good players here. Like, you know, so I'm in that room. You know, I'd been at Team Canada events where I got cut and stuff like that. So I knew that was the way the interview was kind of going. And so I kind of just sunk in my chair. And then towards the end of it, he with his big grin, he goes, "But how about tomorrow we get you some gear?" And that was how he said it. And so I was confused. I couldn't even like talk. I was kind of like, what? And he's like, "I'm just bugging you." He's like, you're going to be a Vernon Viper this year. You know, I think what he said was I couldn't cut you. Like you did everything that you possibly could. And you made it so that I couldn't cut you is how he put it. which was good to hear because I do remember doing everything I could in that camp and in those preseason games. So yeah, that was when I heard that, I kind of just like flood of emotion. I remember, running out Dylan Walchuk, who was on the team, good buddy of mine. Like, he was pumped. He was in the hallway just doing this and telling my family. It was really cool. I mean, like, my uncle, Jim Sparrow, and my auntie Kathleen, they've been ticket season holders since the 90s. And, so my family has always supported the Vipers. They've always loved the Vipers. So that was a huge moment for our whole family, really. That I had, made the team. And so it was really exciting that whole year. And then the year that we had, I mean, unbelievable. So, yeah.
I mean, well, yeah, let's get into it. I mean, sort of as a 17-year-old guy, and you're on a team that is trying to three-peat, and, as we know, history comes, you come a goal away from three-peating, but we'll talk to that. You get into 41 games, 7 points. The team itself, though, pretty good. And when we talked with Dave Robinson, he said the team itself was quite a bit different from the team before. Obviously, you don't have the Jones twins anymore. Lots of guys. Kevin Krause has moved on. So all of a sudden, as it stands in junior A hockey, you've got to sort of retool and refresh. Coming into it, though, you wouldn't know it. I mean, the regular season finished with 36 wins, 11 losses. I mean, in 60 games, you finished first again. For you to be able to contribute in any way and get into 41 games, that had to feel pretty good as a 17-year-old.
Absolutely. I give all the credit, most of the credit to that older group. Dave Robinson, Bryce Kokoski, Steve Weinstein, Adam Thompson. There was about 5 or 6 guys that were part of that core group, and that was it. And then there was 14 of us new guys, right? I think 9 of us were in high school. So it was, I mean, we just we were sponges, I think. And that's why we did so well, because you had to learn. You had to learn from the guys that have been there. And they did an incredible job with that. Dave Robinson in particular, I'm a blood relative. We're cousins. So I looked up to him always, but he just did a phenomenal job. He held me very accountable, held all us young guys very accountable. I remember the first couple of practices at 17 years old, and you're still, practice is always fun, and it should be fun, but at that level, there's a little bit more importance to it, I would say. And I think there were the first couple of practices, I was kind of a little bit light, maybe a little bit loose, missing a few passes, kind of goofing around. And I remember Dave came up to me one practice and he grabbed me right by the collar, and he just said, not in a mean way, but he just said, listen, we're here to get better. So smarten up, essentially, is what he said. So from that point on, it was business time at practice. And I think we were all just like that. All the young guys, we were just, willing to do whatever. For me that year, that's what it was about. It was what can I do? I know I'm not going to go out and score the goals. So what can I do? So, I mean, I was scrapping, I was fighting. I wasn't a good fighter, but I fought. I ran into everything. Ferns called me kamikaze the first couple months, because I just I'd hit everything. Anything that touched the puck, I was running over, even probably some of my teammates at times. Just trying to kind of learn the game. Learned so much that year from that older group, and just every game I got in, I knew it was a privilege. I think it helped me because I felt so privileged to be there, that when I got called to play in a game and put the jersey on, I was dialed and I was ready to go. So unbelievable season. And the playoffs, kind of took me a little bit to find my way. I think, like I said, I was just kamikaze the first couple of months, but then I think I started to learn the game after Christmas, and kind of how it should be played and how it needed to be played. And I think that's when I kind of got a little bit more comfortable. I think I scored my first goal in January. And then after that, I kind of got it going a little bit. First round of the playoffs, I think I was when I really kind of found my game and had a few points. I remember, like you've alluded to that on my other, like my playoff points are just as good as my regular season points in 4 years, and we only went to the playoffs twice. So that was a really fun playoff series. I think we beat Westside, and I think I had 5 points in 5 games or something like that, coming off a season of only scoring 7 points in 40 games or whatever. So that playoff run was just a ton of fun. Yeah, if we want to lead into that, maybe.
Oh yeah, well let's do it. I mean, you're
Yeah.
right. You're spot on. You beat the Warriors in 6 games. I mean,
Yeah.
going into the playoffs, there had to be a lot of pressure though, because again, you're the top dog. Team won the national championship the last 2 years. Who's going to be the guy? Who are going to be the teams that are going to be able to knock off this team? They rolled right back through the regular season, finishing first. And all things considered, in the playoff format back then, though, it was 1 against 4, 2 versus 3. So you're getting a pretty good team right off the hop. It's not like right now where it's 1 versus 7 or 8 or a wild card. You're going right up against a pretty good West Kelowna West Side team. They take you to 6, and then we've talked with other guys about how fun the Bees playoff series are, and we're going to get to that because spoiler alert, we sort of will bookend your junior career with that. But Salmon Arm proximity. I mean, geez, that had to be fun. Yeah. And anytime you get a chance to play those guys, conference finals, so a 3rd straight division title on the line.
Right.
How fun was it? Because you're a local guy. You had to realize that growing up, that was the series, that was the rivalry for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think leading up to that playoffs, again, just Mark did a great job, prepping us for that. And I remember, playoffs was until I got to that level, you never realize how different of an animal playoffs is and how we completely almost reset and re-prepped. We would prep for every series. I remember Ferner did this thing where you kind of studied a guy on the other team that would kind of match up well with you. So, I had a 4th liner and I looked at his stats. I looked at what he did well, what he did, maybe what he didn't do so well. And we all did that, and we kind of prepped for line matching. And it was almost like we were restarting a whole new season. And we went into that playoffs just, rolling and being confident. I think at that time we were a pretty confident group. So, but you know what, Westside, from what I remember in those years, Westside and Salmon Arm that year were both very strong teams. I remember some of the guys on those teams, Salmon Arm had a really strong team. So we knew it wasn't going to be, it's not like we were finishing first and going to roll through this thing. We knew it was going to be a grind. So that first series, I just remember having a ton of fun that first series because the goal, for some reason, the pucks were going in for me. I remember when we'd hand off the bucket, we had the Viper, the hard helmet or the hard hat. And I remember getting that a couple times that series. So that series was just I was having a ton of fun. I don't remember it being too difficult, but I'm sure it was. And then the real difficulty came in that Salmon Arm series because we went down 2-0 in that series from what I remember. So I think we were getting a little nervous. And I have a fun story that I'm sure a lot of people will like about the late Duncan Ray. But we lost game 1 and 2, and it was in our building. And their owner at the time, I don't think Dunk liked them very much to begin with. And he came up in the press box. This is a true story because Dunk came down, and Dunk didn't come down in the dressing room after games too often at that time. But what happened was their owner came up to the press box at the Cal Tire place there, and from what I'm told, he grabbed a broom from the bathroom and did a sweeping motion at Duncan Ray after they had won game 2 in our rink. And Duncan Ray didn't get mad very often. He was always, as you know, he's always just a happy guy. But he came down to the dressing room and basically told Mark Ferner to hang on a second because he wanted to address our team. And he was mad. He was livid. And he told us what had just happened. And he just said, I just want you to know that we're winning this series. So that was kind of big time fuel for us at that point. And we were pissed off. And so, yeah, that's a fun story from Duncan. But yeah, so we ended up, I think we reverse swept them at that point. I think we won 4 straight and took the series after that. So Dunk was pretty happy. And I remember just winning those playoff series was so much fun. Like, just the camaraderie in the room, and like how we would, we'd take a shot of, they call it the Viper venom, is what Duncan would bring in a bottle of whatever it was. I mean, it was gross. It didn't taste very good, but we'd do a shot of that. We'd do a shot of that after a series win, and then get ready for the next one. So yeah, there was a couple awesome series in there that I remember. And then I got injured at some point. I got a concussion, I think, in that Salmon Arm series, I think game 5. So I think I missed most of the next playoff series. And then I didn't get back in until the Doyle Cup against Spruce Grove, which, again, that series was unbelievable. Like, their team was very, very strong, and we knew like it was going to take a lot. I think they had, at that time, they had 10 20-year-olds, because they had the Alberta Junior League was allowed 10. So they had 10 20-year-olds on that team, and we had a bunch of 17-year-olds. So that was a tough series. I remember a lot of injuries and a lot of doing what we could. And then I think it came down to Dave Robinson scoring a double overtime winner in game 7 to go to the RBC Cup. So, I mean, like, the amount of moments in that playoff, we could talk for days and days, but that got us into the RBC. And then what an experience that was too. So
Yeah, well, okay, so you reverse sweep Salmon. I love that story. Duncan used to tell that story, and I got it confused with 2 years earlier. Vipers beat Salmon Arm in 6. So
okay,
it's interesting. They take 2 in your building, and then you have to win 2 in their building. Then you win game 5, and then you seal it in game 6 in their building.
Yeah.
I mean, for Duncan, that had to be pretty crazy. And then you get Powell River. They were the only team better than you guys in the regular season. So you start in Powell River. I know you didn't play in that, but you win the first 2.
Yeah.
And then Dave tells a funny story in game 4 where they got down in game 4, and they're like, no, we're not taking that trip back to Powell. No chance. And then come out with a big win. How difficult was the Doyle Cup to get into? Because you're playing against teams like, at that time, 3 years in a row against Powell River. You're 3 straight Fred Page Cup champs. And now you got to play a team that, I mean, fortunately enough, they played the year before, and went to 7 games. How exciting was that? But, what do you remember about the challenge that the Saints posed, maybe aside from the 10, 20-year-olds, but how it is to get into a series against a team that you personally and a lot of your teammates have never played before?
Don't know. Yeah. From what I remember, they were very hard-nosed. Salmon Arm, West Side were skilled. They were really skilled teams, move the puck well. And then Powell River kind of prepped us, I think, a little bit for the Saints, because they were pretty hard-nosed too. They played really physical and fast. And like you said, we swept that series, which was awesome. And I remember that story too, because I remember Duncan race. It was going to cost him a lot of money if we had to go back to Powell River for game 5. So it was like, let's get this done. And I think, from what I remember, I'm pretty sure he gave his credit card up to one of the 20-year-olds after to let us have a good night, kind of thing, after that series win, because he said something like, you guys couldn't put more than what it would cost me to send you to Powell River on this credit card, so here you go. So I think we went to Earl's, and it was on Duncan, and like, what an awesome owner he was. So leading into that Spruce Grove series, I remember it just being very physical. Like, it was every night you knew, like, you gotta, and I mean, it could have been heightened maybe a little bit for me, because I was coming off kind of a head injury. And I was feeling a little groggy. So some of those games were, they were tough. They were physical, and I really had to dig in for them. But I Ferner just had a bunch of confidence in me, and thank him for that, because I remember leading into that series, me being kind of, should he play? Should he not play? That kind of thing. And Ferns, you know, he left it up to me. He's like, you feel good enough to, I remember him having a meeting with me. Do you feel good enough to play? And I wasn't going to say no, you know, like I was like, yeah, I'm good. And he goes, you know, well, let's get you in the lineup. You're going to have a great game. And he was always just positive with me. And he could have went with a couple. We had lots of extra guys, but, you know, he knew that, you know, I wanted to be in those games and I could make a bit of a difference. So, it was awesome to have, he had a lot of confidence in me at that point in the year. So that was cool as a first year. And yeah, we grinded that series out. I remember just that rink was tough because we had to go there. From what I remember, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we would have played like 4 straight there, I think.
So what would have happened is whoever was hosting first, and I think it was you guys who had
We
it home
hosted,
first.
yeah. So we played the first home games. I think we played 3 at home or 4 maybe.
If
and
you
then
split,
play 3 there.
Yeah, if you split the first 2, you play a third in the same building, and then the remainder of the series is played in the other building to minimize travel.
Yeah. So I think we played like 4 games in that rink that they had, and it was not like, you know, Cal Tire Place is a nice, comfy place compared to that rink in Spruce Grove, from what I remember. So you're going into a small, cold rink in northern Alberta with a real physical team. So I mean, I'm sure people can understand that. So it was tough. It was really, really tough. But we had a tough team. So you know, we just stuck with it. We just played our game, stuck with it. That series really could have went anyway, honestly, because nobody gave an inch. Like, they weren't giving up. And you could tell, and we weren't giving up. And I remember, all I remember is that game 7, really. So many of those games in that building are kind of a blur because, like I said, they were just so much of the same thing. It was, you got on the ice and it was a dogfight. So, but game 7, going into overtime, I remember I've never been more nervous in my life. Like, because that game, I'll share a quick story. I took a tripping penalty in that game. I think in the second period, maybe, from what I remember, and they scored on the power play. So I'm in the box and they score, and that was like the equalizer to make it like 2-2, I think, or 3-3 or whatever. And then that's how the game finished after 60 minutes. So their last goal was essentially my fault. I took a bad, like, it wasn't not a good penalty. It was like a bad tripping penalty. So I remember seeing that dressing room and just being so nervous. Like, I could have probably vomited at that point. I was that nervous. But I knew at that point I probably wasn't going to see much ice in the overtime period. They would probably keep, you know, we had that 4th line going, but they wanted goal scorers on the ice for that. So I just remember just praying, we got to score, please score. Yeah, Dave Robinson, I remember, made a nice move on kind of a partial breakaway. I still remember the goal and kind of slipped it by the goalie. And yeah, and then in Mark Ferner fashion, he came up to me after the game as I was in the stall, and he tapped me. He went around the room and tapped everyone. He tapped me on the pads. He goes, "Yeah, nice tripping penalty, hey?" And yeah, so that was just kind of the way Ferner was. Yeah, that was winning that series. I think that was kind of the most difficult thing we went through that year. Like, that was definitely the most difficult series by far. And then the RBC Cup, I think we went home for like a day or 2 and then right back to Alberta for that RBC Cup. Like, we weren't home for very long. Like, I remember missing a ton of school that month. Like, I don't even think because we would have been in Alberta for like well over a week at that point, like probably almost 2, went back for a couple days and then went straight back for a couple weeks. So we weren't home a lot. And that RBC Cup was, you know, they're kind of, again, they're new teams. But from what I remember, like, we really breezed through that tournament. I think there was a lot of like 5-1, 6-1 games. We were feeling pretty good. And Pembroke, the Lumber Kings, was the team that ended up winning that tournament, beating us. I think we played them in round robin, and I remember that game. And think we handled them pretty well. Like, I think it was a 4-1 finish or a 5-1 finish. And we were feeling pretty good going into that final, thinking, we were never complacent. I don't think we were, overconfident, but we felt good about the game. And from what I remember, we ran into a extremely hot goalie. Like, yeah, we peppered him. We peppered that goalie. I think from what I remember, I'm pretty sure Don Cherry at the time even had a blurb about it on Hockey Night in Canada, because I think it was a 40 something or 50, maybe 54 saves he made that game. Like, just, I mean, we were getting so many chances. I was getting chances. So, I mean, like, if I'm getting scoring chances on the fourth line, like, you can imagine how many, Walchuk had and Dave Robinson had. And we, you know what, I think that's where the hockey gods came in. And for some reason, we just couldn't get a puck through that goalie. It was unbelievable. Post, crossbars, I remember, and just nothing would go in. And it came down to, I think they scored a shorthanded breakaway goal, like, late in the game, unfortunately. And yeah, like, talk about, taking the wind out of your sails. I remember that being a really, like, I mean, to this day, it stings, just, you want that ring, that's what you want at the end of the day. And we were right there. But yeah, it was, in saying that, like, unbelievable season. And it was tough to watch the 20-year-olds that year. It was really tough, like, in the dressing room after that loss, even just watching them take off that jersey. I remember watching guys like Adam Thompson and Steve Weinstein that, had given so much and for that organization, and would have loved to went out with a win, and couldn't quite do it. But just such an awesome group. Like, I don't know if you could assemble a harder working group than that. So I have a lot of really fond memories from that season, that's for sure.
Next year, oh boy, things change up a little bit. Change at the top of the coaching spectrum. Mark Verner heads to the Western Hockey League. Jason Williamson takes over. And I don't know, taking a look through the numbers, team finishes 30-27. Most years, 30 wins will get you into the playoffs. And again, if you've got the playoff format that the league runs right now, it's a relative non-factor. You finish fifth, you're in that 4 or 5 seed. But that's not the case back then. And, you know as well as I do, Vernon fans have certain expectations, and they expect those expectations to be met.
Yep.
And, I mean, what was it like? The ups and downs. You're about as close to a 500 team as possible. I mean, what was it like? And you're a local guy, so some of these guys can disappear at Christmas and maybe get away from it.
Totally.
You can't do that. I mean, walk us through, 2011, 2012 as an 18-year-old team struggling to put wins together, and at the end of the day didn't qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I remember those days just as well as the good ones, right? It was tough, and we try and make moves, and what was going to work, and where are we lacking, and it's tough on your own confidence, right? Like, it's us guys that had been there with the group that had done so well, we're questioning ourselves on what we're doing wrong and things like that. But yeah, it was a lot of, and from those years, I remember just a lot of movement, like a lot of players coming in, a lot of players going out. I saw a lot of, like, really good buddies of mine get traded, just trying to mix things up. When you're not winning and you're in an organization like the Vernon Vipers, like, they're gonna make moves. So nobody was really safe. I remember, to be completely honest with you, I remember thinking, when am I getting moved? When's, I must be on the chopping blocks here. And so yeah, it was tough. Those were, that 18-year-old year was tough, and that 19-year-old year, same thing. We're kind of, I think my 19-year-old year was when we would have made that block, kind of a blockbuster move, moved a ton of players and brought a ton in, because we knew at that point we were hosting in 2014. So we were kind of just prepping for that at that point. But it was tough. Like, missing that season or the playoffs the first season was tough, but it was like, okay, we'll get it back next year. But that second season, that 19-year-old year was really tough because now it's like, okay, well, one year slip up maybe is okay, but now we're going into year two and we're still not seeing results. So yeah, I just remember really, really tough to get chemistry in those years too, when you're moving so many pieces, thinking this will work and then it doesn't, and now what? And tough to kind of find good line mates. I think the biggest difference was what I remember from that first year was, by January, we had a pretty good idea of what the lineup was going to look like and what was going to work. And everyone knew their role and their identity. And we just, it's hard to beat when you're playing, when a team's like that. And we just didn't really find it in those years. It was hard to find roles for myself. I remember kind of struggling with a role. I kind of wanted to develop my game into, I didn't want to be just, the fourth line grinder. I wanted to try and add some offensive ability and this and that. And again, just kind of struggling with where I fit because things were moving so much and other guys struggling with where they fit. So yeah, it was just a lot of, from what I remember, it was just a lot of, trying different things and not having a whole lot of success. So that's tough, but I mean, that's the game. And you got to learn, you got to have those seasons, I think, in your career. Otherwise, if you had every season like the one I had my first year, you'd never learn how to, you'd never learn adversity, right? Really. You'd never learn how to lose. So that was, a lot of learning curves for us. And we managed to make some good moves in that 2013 year to kind of get we had a good team that my 20-year-old year again. Maybe not as strong as the team we had my first year, but a lot of similar characteristics. We had a good, strong core group of guys that were willing to work hard. So that was a good year too.
2012-13, the big trades you're talking about, Aaron Hadley goes to Nanaimo, you get John Bryan and Michael McDickless for the next year. And then you trade Adam Tambellini to Surrey. He goes on to win a Fred Page, and they were runners-up, I believe, on the semifinals Saturday in Summerside. And you get Mason Blacklock back in the trade. You get D'Amico Hanoun for the year after as the futures deal. And now your team is essentially set. And those guys, all things considered, those 4 or 5 guys were instrumental. But huge. Even in that hosting year, I mean, as a 19-year-old that you're going into a year where you're going to host, but you don't have a scholarship yet. You're going into your final year. It's a hosting year. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a 20-year-old, you're taking up one of 6 spaces on a team that's hosting. I mean, what sort of went through your mind going into that final year, knowing that the pieces are in place now? It looks like the team on paper is very good. This happens to be my first year in Vernon, so I was excited to be a part of that. But, what goes through your head when you find out that, you're going to be a 20-year-old in your hometown team hosting the national championship, and you've missed the playoffs the last 2? This is it. Yeah.
Excitement, like nervousness, all sorts of emotions probably I could at some point. But I think at that point in my career and like where I was and thinking back to missing a chance my first year, I think I was pretty focused on what was going to happen one way or another. So, but it didn't go smoothly for me. I don't know, I was never overly worried about the scholarship thing. I kind of hoped that would take care of itself. And I was more about just enjoying being at the rink and being with the guys and just putting a good product on the ice. And I'd hope that, things would just kind of come from that. Right. And it did. So it was nice. But yeah, that year started off pretty rocky because from what I remember, I separated my shoulder. I think maybe the second game of the year at the showcase in Chilliwack. So I battled a shoulder injury for about 4 weeks at the start of the year. And it was really unfortunate timing for the school aspect too, because I remember the game that I separated my shoulder. I had Anchorage University and there's 2, I can't remember the other one, but 2 universities came to watch me. And of course, I think it was the second or third shift of the game, I separated my shoulder. So that kind of put me on the back burner with scholarships. Those teams, rather than offering me kind of a fly down to check the university out, they're like, how about we hold off, see how your shoulder, wait till you get back in some games, and then we'll talk to you then. So, that was kind of tough on a personal level. But we were having some success with the team. We had a pretty good start from what I remember in that year. And a lot of good skill. Like I remember, Blacklock playing with Mason, and he had a hot start that year from what I remember. He was scoring every night. And so I knew we had some really good pieces, some tough guys. Like Liam Coughlin was an awesome piece for us that year. Josh Bryan that we brought in on the back end, he reminded me of a Steve Weinstein, Adam Thompson type defenseman that had been in the league for a long time. So like looking at the team, I was like, this is awesome. Like we got some awesome pieces. Now it's kind of, at that point, it was kind of up to, my guys like myself, Ryan Renz, guys that had been there. I think me and him would have been the only team that, the only guys that would have been on that first year team. He came in kind of halfway. So it was basically me and him were the only ones that had been there, but we had a lot of guys that had been in the league a long time and some older guys. So we knew we had a good leadership group that could kind of lead the way. So it was just exciting. I think it was more than anything, we were just excited to, do our, have the best season we could have, and then just really be ready to go for the RBC Cup. So, and it went, I think we went right to the Fred Page Cup that year and won some awesome series. And so, I got some great memories from then. And then the RBC Cup was, as much as, would have loved to win it. What an opportunity to have that tournament in my hometown at 20 years old. Like just, I'll never forget that tournament. Yeah.
It was a pretty crazy season. I mean, I have it open in front of me. You finished with 30 wins. The year before, 30 wins isn't good enough to get you in.
Right.
Or 2 years earlier, pardon me. You draw West Kelowna in the first round, and what was interesting about that, they tied Penticton for top spot in the interior division,
right.
But Penticton had one more win. So you ended up getting West Kelowna instead of Penticton in the first round.
Right.
They had 8 points on you in terms of the standings.
Yeah.
But you guys caught fire and knocked them out in 6 games. I mean, again, you want to try and do it the right way, right? You want to win your way in, and there was some parity in the league that year. Best team was Victoria and Langley, and then the V's, and then you guys were in a tier just under that. So to knock off West Kelowna in 6 games, so you're winning that series at home. I mean, what do you remember about that? And just getting through that first notch, knowing that the V's were waiting for you on the other side.
So what I remember leading up to that was us bringing in Brett Mulcahy. So it was a tough time of that year, the trade deadline, because I remember even thinking like, well, what if they move me, kind of thing. But I remember having some conversation with Williamson, and he talked about Mulcahy, like, what do you think? And I'd played with Brett Mulcahy on that Okanagan Rockets team, and I knew the kind of guy he was, like, just great leader. You get the same thing from every night. And I remember saying to Williamson, bring him in for sure, because he's going to help. And we got some chemistry built there, and like, bring him in, put him on my line, and let's do this thing. So, that's what happened. Unfortunately, we moved Jason Bird, who was such a good team guy. But we needed to open up a 20-year-old spot, and that's just the way it works. So we brought in Brett Mulcahy, and I think that was, at that time, was kind of the turning point for me, especially. Like, I had a feeling like, what, with this piece, now he can help. He had some unbelievable leadership qualities that I knew was going to help a lot. So we went into that series, and, I remember me and Brett having conversations like, we've played in this league long enough. We've been here enough. He'd just done it with Surrey. I'd been there with Vernon. Like, we know how to do this thing. Let's go get it. And honestly, we were just, I think Mulcahy had 7 goals maybe in the first 2 games of that series. I think he had 3 goals the first night and 4 the second. So pretty tough to lose when you got a guy going like that. So yeah, we just it started kind of with our line playing really good and producing, and then we just kind of got everybody to buy in, and all lines were firing, and we were playing pretty confident in the playoffs and towards the end of that year. So yeah, we felt really good. Obviously that the V's, so West K, you know, we get through them, and then that V series was unbelievable. That was a lot of fun. They had a really good team. We matched up well with them, and I'm sure you remember that series pretty well. Yeah, just what a way to end it for sure.
So you go through. So I'll take you back because again, I've got this stuff in front of me. West Kelowna, you guys pretty much had a lead all the way through.
Right.
You had to go. You're up 3-1, trying to win the series in West Kelowna. The Warriors beat you 4-1. But then you come out and kind of blow their doors off in Game 6, 5-0. Wasn't all that close. Then you go right into Penticton.
Yeah.
You knock them off in Game 1. They split Game 2. They take Game 3. You win Game 4. And then you win Game 5 in their building. Chance to win it in 6 at home.
Yeah.
And it's the big crowd curse. The over 2,500 people there, and they shut you out to force a Game 7. Yeah. And then let's talk Game 7, because again, for me, that was my first Game 7, my first year with the team. I've got stories that I remember from my perspective way up in the booth. I remember texting my wife after it was 3-1 Penticton heading in the third period saying, wow, looks like I'll be home. And then you score. Yeah. Hersley or Mulcahy scores.
Yeah.
And off to overtime. I mean, what do you remember about that Game 7? Because that one probably felt a little bit different than the prior Game 7 against Spruce Grove.
Totally. And I think that's, I think that just goes back to, the confidence that I think Mulcahy added in our group. And for me, like, I felt so confident with that guy in the locker room, because I knew what he was about. I knew his character, and I knew, like, he wasn't, he's not a guy that takes no for an answer in a hockey game. So I remember going into that second intermission down 3-1, like you said. Williamson honestly didn't say much, at that point. It was, I think I even talked to him, like, you know what, kind of let us have the room. Like, at that point, it wasn't going to be anything that could be drawn up, or, maybe a face-off play at the end of the game or whatever. But, it was just about, how are we going to get out there and, like, get back in this one? Like, how are we going to make this happen? And again, I think it just came down to being so confident, like, in our room and with those guys. And Mulcahy, like, I played with him long enough to know that he doesn't miss. Like, if you give him a chance, he rarely misses in a high pressure situation. So it was good knowing I had a line mate like that. I think from what I remember, and I've watched, they got videos on these games, but I got a nice backdoor feed on a power play, I think, from McNicholas. Made like an awesome play, and I just had to tap it in, and that made it 3-2. And then again, it was just
2 minutes later. 2 minutes later.
And we were like, just get things to the net. And I know, playing with a guy like Mulcahy, it's like, get it to the net and he'll put it in. And that was what it was all about. Like, that's all I was thinking. We were always pretty good in our D zone, but, like, how are we going to get pucks to the net, because we need a couple goals. And a couple minutes later, like you said, I remember going down the wing, and I know I've watched this one a couple times, but I took a shot trying to get it to the net. D-man blocked it, and then I just whacked it again. Goalie made a save. So I think I had 2 chances at it, and then Mulcahy just came barreling in the slot and just put it upstairs. Like, it's a good thing that he had that shot and not me, because I probably would have missed it. But he doesn't miss late in the game. So he scored like he normally does. And that was a good feeling to tie it up. And again, now we're going into overtime, and I remember that same, that nervous feeling anytime you go into overtime in Game 7, because it's a bounce, and, like, how are we gonna control this? It's so hard to, going into a period where you need a goal or two, it's a little bit easier to control, and how are we gonna do it? But that one was, this is just gonna happen. This has got to happen. So I think it was McNicholas, double overtime, put it upstairs over the goalie's shoulder, and the rest is history. I don't remember much of that overtime. I think I was just too nervous to like even remember it, but we got the win, so that felt pretty darn good.
Thankfully, that overtime didn't take very long. 2 minutes into
Yeah,
it, I'll never forget this. This is on my,
yeah,
broadcaster highlight reel. Really,
yeah,
a situation where it's a point shot that goes into the corner, goes a little wide. Dank Setter's in front, and Michael McNicholas finishes it off. Now, Duncan Ray called it one of the biggest goals in franchise history, and that's saying a lot because, again,
no doubt.
national championships, and I mean, jubilation over 3,100 V's fans. You could hear a pin drop minus you guys. I mean, my goodness, to knock off a team as good as they were, because when you guys were missing the playoffs, they were running through teams like you used to do. I mean,
Oh yeah.
what did it feel like to win it? Not just win it, but win it in their building, and to be able to celebrate like that.
Yeah, and I think for Duncan Ray enjoying that one, because at that time, I think those couple of years, like you alluded to, it was kind of like this was almost the V's league now, right? It had been the Vipers being the powerhouse, and now for the last 2-3 years, the V's have, more or less embarrassed a lot of teams. Like I remember in those years prior, like that those teams they had, like they would, just smoke teams. So it had kind of been they were the team to beat now, and I don't think Duncan liked that too much. So that one probably felt pretty sweet for him, to get back on top and shut the V's up for a little bit there. So just that made it that more special. And they did have an awesome team. We had to shut down a lot of really good players on that team. And again, McNicholas was always, kind of Johnny on the spot too. So we just had some great pieces that year that I was really confident in. And so that was just an awesome series win. And then, the Coquitlam series that we went into, I mean, that was a crazy one. It was the weird format where we were kind of sitting and waiting for what was going to happen. Cause I think we finished, it was us, Victoria, and them maybe, and we beat out Victoria in that round robin or whatever.
Yeah, so how it worked is Coquitlam was the first team that came up to play, and you guys blew the doors off of them 6-1.
Yeah.
And then you went to Victoria, beat them,
Right.
beat the Grizzlies, and then if Coquitlam beat Victoria, it was over. Then it was just, and that's exactly what happened. I remember watching that game. They went into triple overtime. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. I remember the funny story about that one. We were all sitting. We went out to eat that night, and we thought we have just a couple beers, and me and a few of the older guys just a couple beers and see what kind of happens. Because I think if Victoria would have won, we were playing in a couple nights or a night or two away. But if Coquitlam won, we had a little bit longer of a break, so it was kind of like how many beers are we going to get in here? Like it was kind of depending, and it went so long that we're sitting there, we're like, we got the game on our phones. I remember, I'll never forget, we're at I can't remember what bar we were at, but we were at a bar and watching like, can I keep ordering drinks, or like, do I got to get ready for friggin' 2 nights from now? So, and then of course, like, I think we were already heading home. I think what had happened, we were heading home from the bar because we were like, screw it, we're not waiting any longer. And then of course Coquitlam scores, and we're like, oh, should we go back? Like, but no, I think we went home that night. But Coquitlam was a weird matchup. That was a frustrating series from what I remember. Like pucks just weren't quite going in, weren't getting some calls. Like it's funny because I just watched a couple weeks back. I watched the game 4. They had it on the on YouTube. They're doing the throwback games or whatever. And they had Jared Wilson message me, and he goes, check this out. He sent me the link. So I watched the end of that game. And even that game 4, I mean, I totally forgot about this, but I tied it up really late in the game. But Riley Gunther with a hand pass, they waved it off with like 2 seconds left to send it to overtime. And that's just what I remember from that series. I remember getting a couple breakaways I didn't score on, and just like things weren't going in. And at that point, everything was going in for me in that line. And for some reason, that series, we just couldn't quite do it, and they had our number. So, yeah.
I did a number because you guys played pretty well in that series.
Yeah,
Coquitlam only led that series, I think, for 18 minutes or so. Most of that was in the third period of game 4
right,
before you know, sort of tied it up.
right.
But I mean, that was one of the crazier things. I mean, they were an offensive team, not a whole lot of defense. They had unreal goaltending, and they
Yeah,
had a couple of guys that, you know, caught as much on fire as you guys did. I mean,
yeah,
as disappointing as it was that you didn't take the Fred Page and get to the Western Canada Cup, at least you
yeah,
got a chance to recoup. And you
yeah.
know, I hadn't thought about this in a long time either. But you know, just going through the RBC numbers,
Mhm.
my goodness, you won trophies, my man. There are you.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't realize this. Top forward, um, top scorer. I mean, those are
yeah,
pretty significant achievements
yeah.
in your hometown. And you guys went 2-2. What do you remember about the way it went? Because it seemed like that series against Coquitlam kind of rubbed off all the way through. I mean, an up and down tournament. You lose the first game, you win against Yorkton in the second game,
Yeah.
and then you lose in the third game to Dauphin. But then you have to win to get in
Mhm.
to the semifinals, and you do so against
Yeah,
Lakeshore.
yeah.
Oh, the game winner's escaping me, but I mean, I think Danks maybe scored
Extra game. Yeah,
to move it on, but I
yeah,
mean that's again just to give yourselves a shot at the semifinals. But that was an up and down tournament for, you know, every
absolutely.
team involved, because I'm looking at it and I mean Dauphin was the best team in the tournament. Everybody else
Yeah,
was 2-2. Like that's pretty much even across the board.
yeah, yeah. That tournament was full of highs and lows. Like I said, we're coming off that Coquitlam series that was really frustrating for our group. I think it really frustrated us because to that point we were rolling pretty good. Um, but like you said, it was kind of like, you know, we tried to look at it like maybe it was a good thing, but we didn't. You know, that lengthens your season when you go to that Western Cup and you play some hard teams, and we're getting into the tournament anyways, so let's just go do it. So, you know, we were feeling pretty good going into the tournament from what I remember. And um, you know, I think for me, I really started to be like, okay, this is like, it just mattered to me a lot, you know, and not to say that it didn't matter to everybody else on the team and everybody that had been there. But for me, like, I think I was the only guy on the team that had been on that first year from start to finish and kind of went through that season and missed that RBC Cup. Me and Ryan Renz was there too, but just that one stung, and I think it really like gave me some fuel, and I wanted to win that tournament, you know, real bad. I can guarantee you nobody wanted to win it more than me there at that tournament. So, you know, I had some things to prove, and you know, like you said, it was up and down. Really, really interesting tournament. Some teams, you get so many different teams there, that different styles of play, that just aren't used to each other. So you just never know. Like some teams can really surprise you, and some teams you'll walk right over that some other teams might think are challenging. It's just, and I think that's what happened, you know, with York, and they surprised us in that semifinal. You know, there's so many highs and lows. I remember, you know, the Dexter Danks goal just to push us through, and it was like, okay, you know what, we got a shot. That's all we needed was a shot. I think we handled Dauphin pretty well. Like that was probably one of our best games. Dauphin was supposed to be the team to beat, and I think, you know, we beat them by a few goals for sure. That game felt good. Yeah, it was just like highs and lows of that tournament. And then obviously like the crushing low. I think I'll never forget that Yorkton game, and losing out. That one stung because, yeah, I mean, personally it was such a cool tournament for me. Like so many emotions because I just wanted that win. Like that's all I wanted. So I'm at the awards ceremony, you know, winning these awards that are awesome. But at the end of the day, like I'd trade anything to win that championship, right? So, but yeah, those were really cool. Those awards, I remember getting calls saying I was getting them, and I remember going at the RBC Cup my 17-year-old year, and those guys winning those awards, and me thinking like, wow, like those guys are. I think who won it that year was Pekka, who's I think he's now, you know, he's been in and out of the NHL for a long time. Like some really good players won those awards that year at that tournament. So it was pretty cool to win those awards and get my name, you know, with those guys of that caliber. because those are tough awards to win. But I just all I cared about was winning that the championship game. So that tournament was really stung, that semifinal game, because Yorkton was a team that I thought we should have had. But you know what? They had our number that game. They scored a few early, I think, or not many shots. Like they were going in for some reason for them. And I don't think I don't think they outplayed us by any means. I think that was a game we should have had, but that's what happens in hockey. Sometimes they go in, sometimes they don't. So tough finish to that season, because our group was so confident and felt so good, and then just kind of ran into who knows what it was. Something wasn't quite rolling, and we didn't get it done. So
obviously not the way you wanted it to go. I mean, you bookend
yeah.
your junior career with 2 national championship appearances. And again, you sort of talked about it. I mean, I don't want to, make slight or necessarily poke fun, but you had 188 career junior games played in the regular season, just regular season. And you had 87 points. You played in 26 playoff games, and these numbers are just BCHL numbers. They don't even include your RBC numbers. In 26 playoff games with the Vipers, you had 27 points. You're a point-a-game guy in the postseason, and you had 87 combined points in 4 seasons, so averaging just under 40 a season. That's pretty incredible when you sort of break it down to your line getting red hot. And I said, and I don't think I'm wrong, your line of Pursley, Mulcahy, and yourself were the reason why, you guys were able to get through some of those tough series.
Yeah. You know what? Like it's funny when I look back on it, and I had Williamson would always talk about it, and I was just a playoff guy. I don't know what I'll never know what changes when I get into a playoff, atmosphere, but they say it's like a different animal. It's a different season. It's totally different. And it is. And for myself, it always was. And I think, I just found a way to elevate my game when I needed to. So, that's the only thing I could, because nothing else changed. I didn't get a new stick or anything like that. I don't know why they went in the playoffs, but they always seem to. Because I mean, even, that year for sure they were going in, but I even think back to my first year, like why was I scoring in the playoffs then? You know what I mean? On that 4th line, like we had no business scoring goals, but we were. So, I think it's just a matter of playing the game hard and playing the right way. And I think the playoffs just opens up areas for different guys to really make a difference. And I think, because I was never a staple power play guy. I was never the first line power play guy that was gonna, sit on the half wall and take the shots and stuff like that. So, in the regular season, like I was there to open up space for my line mates and just play hard and lay the body and take my fair share of penalty minutes. And so I did a lot of different things in the regular season, I think, and that kind of helped contribute. And then in the playoffs, it was just everybody's got to play every role in the playoffs. There's no, you got your power play guys in that, but every game's hard nosed and everybody has got to be going. So it opens up a little bit of space for different guys. So always love the playoffs. That's for sure. They always brought the challenge that I think suited me well. Yeah.
You were able to get your goal, when the season was over. At what point did you end up committing to Fairbanks? I know it was pretty late in your 20-year-old season. I mean, what did that mean to you? And maybe walk us through your 2 years of Alaska Fairbanks. Always like to ask the question, as a 20-year-old, you're just living the life. You're a hometown guy. You're playing junior hockey. Whoops, less than a couple months later, now you're a student athlete and you're playing hockey at an even higher level, and now you've got grades to maintain. What was that whole process like for you?
Yeah, talk about a wake-up call, especially a guy, I played my hometown, right? So I didn't move away. I lived at my parents' basement till I was, 20 years old. And, mom cooked the meals and did most of my laundry, and I had it pretty good. So, I got committed to Alaska kind of late in that season, like almost like playoff time. which was interesting and totally different. I didn't even get like a fly down, or, you know, things start coming to you when it goes well, and it was going well for me, right? So I started to get the phone calls, you know, late in that season, because, you know, I was getting points, and that's what happens when universities need guys at the end of the year. They're looking at the BCHL and who's hot in the BCHL, who's doing what. So I started getting phone calls at that time, and I was talking to a few different schools, and Fairbanks just kind of happened to be the one that seemed to show the most interest. They had a really good deal for me. A good friend of mine, Becerra, who I'd played with on the Vipers prior, who's still, you know, one of my best friends. He was there already. Had lots of good things to say about the program, and it was, you know, I did think about it. It was a couple weeks there where I was talking to Bemidji State, I think, Mankato. I had a few conversations with a lot of WCHA teams that were kind of in the BC area watching, and yeah, one day at practice, I just, you know, Fairbanks had called me the night before and said, we were really serious. We want you to kind of, they didn't really give me an ultimatum, but they said, like, we don't want to get into a bidding war with anyone. So it's, you know, we want you to let us know in the next 48 hours. It's basically what they said to me. So I went out the next day of practice, and I remember a few warm-up laps, took a couple shots, and I was feeling pretty good. And I was like, you know what, let's just get this done. I don't want to worry about it, because I think we were already in the playoffs at that point. And I just said, I want to get this out of the way and off my chest. And I think Fairbanks is the right decision. So I honestly, another good story. I went up to Williamson, because we were just about to start practice. And I said, I got to make a phone call. And I think he knew what was going on. And I think he knew that I needed to make that decision before I could really focus on what was going on for us, right? So I left the ice mid-practice and went and called Dallas Ferguson in Fairbanks there, and got the deal all done. So what an awesome experience that was. You know, in hindsight, do I regret not finishing my 4 years there? For sure. I try not to hold on to too many regrets when it comes to hockey, but I wish I would have stuck it out. The program took a bit of a hit, but when I got there that first year, whirlwind for me. Like, I'm doing my laundry, I'm cooking my food now. Like, I'm trying to survive 5 college classes, and I'm trying to perform and what their standard is. And they're a hardworking organization, and we had a really, really good team. We had Colton Sparrow as our captain, who's now a, you know, very well-paid NHL defenseman. So just some awesome guys in that locker room, and you know, they trained hard, and they, you know, were just hard-nosed and worked hard in grades, and, you know, monthly grade checks, and you're held to a very high standard at that college level. That you know, at the junior level, you can go home after and play video games and, you know, eat pizza, and you're probably fine. But at that level, you got to really be on top of things. So that was a good wake-up call for me. But what an awesome experience that year. We had a great team. We unfortunately ran into a bit of issues with our compliance, and we ended up actually getting a playoff ban that year, which was devastating, because I think we were like hottest team in the nation going into that playoffs. I think we'd won 8 of 10 and swept the number 1 seed Mankato. So we were like up there and one of the better teams, and Alaska had never had a call like a tournament berth to that point. So that was a huge opportunity for us that got taken away. So that was really devastating, a lot, especially for the seniors and the older guys. For me, again, being a young guy, I knew I had some more chances, but yeah, I learned a lot that year, I'll tell you. Dallas Ferguson, I think he's still with Denver. He was the coach there at the time. Great coach, like so knowledgeable. I think I learned more about the game that year than I did in all my years. Just how to play kind of the game, the X's and O's. Like, really, you kind of became more of a student of the game at that point. And in college, it kind of allows for that, because you have so much time to prep for the weekend. You know, you practice all week and you do a lot of video and it becomes a little bit more of a science almost. So that was an awesome year. Second year was great too. Dallas Ferguson again. We didn't have as strong as a group that year, but again, just I miss that program. Like that was a lot of fun being up there, and I really cherish those years I had. Yeah.
You make the decision. You sort of mentioned it a little bit earlier. And, sometimes you lose track with players. We didn't realize that that decision was made when you happened to be home around Christmas and you came on the radio broadcast that we were doing. And, you were at the University of Regina for your last for 2 years following that.
That's right.
I mean, speak to the decision to leave and what it was like. I mean, at the end of the day, again, it's all about trying to get an education. Were you able to do that? And were you satisfied sort of, all things considered that, your 4 years of college, even at 2 different establishments, worked out the way it did?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, like I said, it's, I got a lot of good experience. And I think now looking back on it, that's what it's all about, right? It's about, gathering the most experience and all the memories and teammates and things like that, and just knowledge that you can. So, I really enjoyed my time in Saskatchewan. How that whole thing came about after my second year in Alaska, the season had ended, and I was just I was in a weird place as far as like what I wanted to do with my career. Did I want to pursue pro hockey? Did I want to just get my degree? It's a very demanding place up there. There's a lot of reasons as to why, but up there, like it's, you're in 5 classes a semester. Your travel schedule is a complete nightmare. We'd have weekend games. We'd be on a red eye out of Fairbanks on Monday nights, and we'd fly basically 24 hours to our destination, 3 different flights, lose 5 hours of time change, sleep for a day, practice Wednesday, Thursday, play Friday, Saturday, fly 20 hours back to Fairbanks, then have to get up, get into Fairbanks at 3 a.m. and go to school at 7. So like, as far as, a grind, that's about as good as it gets up there. So it really, what I say about that program is you have to love it. You have to love being there, and you have to be committed. Otherwise you just won't survive. And after that second year, I was just kind of, a little bit burnt out with the grind. And I thought maybe something else was in the cards for me. So I ended up leaving the program, on good terms, like with Dallas, just explained him the situation. He really, really tried to get me to stay. I had a couple of late night meetings in his office where there was, even tears involved on both sides. And because that's a big decision, right? It's 4 years of your life, and you commit a lot to the program and they commit a lot to you. So, we had a lot of emotional conversations trying to, figure out if, I should stay, if I'm going to regret it, this and that. But at the end of the day, I decided to sign my letter, because when you leave a program like that, you got to get a signature on the coach's side to allow you to either take a new scholarship or whatever. And I told him, I'm like, no, I have no interest in going back to the NCAA. So we didn't get all the paperwork done for that. And I hadn't really thought about what I was going to do. I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to even go and play anywhere. But I had a friend, Zach McPhee, a buddy of mine, played in the Vipers for a little bit, was at the university for a couple of years in Regina. And he said, man, like, why don't you come here, like finish your degree? Like, we'd love to have you. So I started getting phone calls from the CIS teams, UBC and U of A and U of R calling me. And I'm sitting at home now. I've been home for about a month or 2, and I'm starting to get that itch back, right? Like for the month 2 prior, I was like, no, I'm just going to, apply at UBCO, finish my degree. And I had a lot of fun doing it, and that was it. And then of course the hockey itch, gets you. And so that process kind of started with Regina. It was an easy process to transfer like internationally. I had a lot of people on my side, a lot of academic advisors like pulling some strings for me. But I managed to get basically out of the 22 classes that I took in Fairbanks, I got, I think, 19 or 20 of them transferred over. So I only lost 1 or 2. So I was pretty much on pace And that was important for me because at that point I was really concerned of my education. Like that was what I wanted to get that done. You know, because I had some sleepless nights at you know, college, right? So I was like, I'll go there, but like I'm not just like gonna give up this degree. So yeah, I transferred everything over, and it went pretty smoothly. It was a lot of work, a lot of tracking down syllabuses from old professors, and that summer was not a lot of fun. But I got it done, and got moved over to Regina and went and played there for 2 years, and that was a really neat experience, honestly. The CIS, or the U Sports, it's called now, but like that league's no joke. I mean, going into it, you know, I think an NCAA guy, you think like, okay, well, it's going to be, you know, 5 steps down, but it's not. There's some phenomenal players in that league because, you know, there's some really, really strong Western League guys that score 50 goals in the Western League that go into that league, right? Like U of A has some crazy talent. So you're not going into a slump of a league. I say the difference. I get this question a lot, like, well, what's the difference? Because I played 2 years of both, right? About the same amount of games. Um, I would just say the only difference maybe is the NCAA is they just train hard, and they're there for a big reason. A lot of the times in the CIS with those programs, it's a little bit laid back. You know, you're maybe not training as hard. Practices maybe, you know, a little bit less. There's a little bit less like intensity, I would call it. But as far as skill goes, there's no difference. I think it's just a skill. I just think the NCAA demands you're ready for every shift. There's no slow games in the NCAA. So it was a decent. I like that change. You know, it kind of it was a little easier on the body in the CIS, and things slowed down a little bit, and nice comfy game schedule, small schedule. And it was a great transition for me. I had a lot of fun in Regina. I met a lot of people. Saskatchewan people are awesome. If it weren't for the weather, I'd live there without a doubt. Great people there. Met a lot of nice people, good connections that I still have. So it was good. It was good to kind of get, you know, now I can say I'm a alumni of both programs, and I got my degree done. I got my bachelor's in psychology at the University of Regina there. So I managed to do it in 4 years, which was pretty good considering the transfer that I had to go through. And yeah, everything went well. And then that led into, you know, like we talked about, my brief professional stint the next year. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. So you have a cup of coffee in Sweden, and we sort of
Yeah.
dabbled before we hit record that, you know, you loved it, the professional lifestyle, the professional,
Yeah.
just being a professional, so different. We'll touch on that, and then, you know, with your Bachelor of Psychology, how you've been able to transition that. I know that Jason McKee and John Glenn have used you to talk to you know, this past year's Viper team, and the way their season ended, you know, with no closure, and all of a sudden it was just like it ended. You know, how you felt about, you know, being able to give back and going through the highs and the lows that, you know, a guy like you went through, and being able to share that and doing so with the education to back that up.
You betcha. Yeah. Then, yeah, like you said, the professional stint was. I'm glad I did it. Like I said, I signed an East Coast contract with Wichita. Things didn't work out there. Played some games in the SPHL, didn't work out there. Ended up in Sweden, which was my fondest memories of the professional hockey that I've played. It was just like I talked about. It was beautiful. The hockey was great. It was skilled. It was I didn't have to hit as much. I didn't have to run into as many guys. So it was nice. It was just, honestly, it was a 4-month vacation. They paid me to play, and it was awesome. They gave me a nice apartment, and, you know, I'd recommend it to anyone that wants to just, you know, I was able to just kind of go out with a good feeling. You know, you play the game for so long, and there's so many highs and lows, and there's so many things that, you know, that East Coast experience wasn't a great one for me, right? And I didn't want to go out like that. You know, thinking, you know, you're locked in. I had a good contract, and you're there, and all of a sudden, you know, basically they telling you to pack your bags, and you got about 12 hours to get out of the apartment. So, you know, there's at that level, you're really essentially a number and a dollar sign, and you're not so much valuable as a human being. So, you know, I went to Sweden and it was awesome. They loved me there. It was great. You know, I have a lot of good experiences there. If they would pay me more money, I probably would still be there, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, it was time to move on. So yeah, with the bachelor's degree, when I came back, Rhonda Cat was kind of the first person I went to and said like, hey, you know, all the things I went through in my career, and there's tons of ups and downs and you know, struggles and things like that. And I learned that I wish that I would have had somebody in my court on that side of things, you know, just the mental side of keeping you sane, keeping you positive, keeping you whatever it is, because there's lots of, you know, there is lots of struggles. As much as, you know, guys' careers seem like, you know, smooth and great and everything must be great in that guy's life. That's not always the case by any means. It's pretty demanding game. So when I got back, that was the first thing I wanted to do. I talked to Ron and I said, I'd love to, you know, counsel these athletes, whether they have struggles and they want to talk about it, or whether they just, maybe it's just some upkeep, maybe it's just some mindset stuff that'll make them a better athlete or whatever it is. I had no real plan, but I just wanted to help because I knew that there was lots of athletes that could use it. And yeah, so then through Rhonda Cat, I talked with the Vipers ownership and stuff like that, and they loved the idea. I talked with the whole group a couple times, and then I did a few individual players throughout the year, some that I'm still currently working with, just on, you know, the mental side of it, because that's where a lot of the battle is as an athlete. You know, you can be in the gym and train and do all that, but if you know, if mentally there's some areas where you lack or whatever, you're not going to last very long, right? So that's what I've been doing with the Vipers, a few of Rhonda's athletes at the POE Academy, working with some of their athletes. Ideally, that's like what I want to do. That's the plan. It's going to be a bit of a process. I got a few more pieces of paper I'm going to have to get in the coming years, but that's what I want to do long term, is help athletes, because I think not only with the background in psychology and knowing a little bit about how the mind works and its functions, but just being an athlete, I think I noticed with a lot of the Vipers guys this year, it's really easy for them to work with me because they can identify and I can identify with them. Hey man, like I sat in that dressing room, you know, I wore that jersey. I can show them where I sat, and you know, that helps them be like, okay, I can, you know, trust this guy because he's been there. You know what I mean? So it's been a really rewarding thing that I've started with doing this. So.
Well, and to take that a step further, I mean, with this year's team, just as an example, you know, 30 wins up and down. I mean, geez, you were a part of a couple of those teams, but,
Totally.
you know, when they were mentally on, team was hard to beat, and they showed that in the playoffs before it got cut short, and maybe that would have been I mean, you track that, you know, as it goes on. It's a part of the game that, you know, people just have the one dimension that they see, and it's what they see for the 2.5 hours that they're there. But I mean, you probably, after speaking with some of these players, would probably notice a direct impact or a direct boost, and it seemed like that team got mentally stronger as the season went on.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, you know, Jason brought me in to speak with the group, and at that time, it was when, you know, he felt that, you know, they were kind of at a breaking point, and just to talk to him, and I'm really glad I did, because I think it led to a few guys reaching out personally. That could use it, and that was awesome. And like I said, I'm still working with some of those guys, and they're awesome kids. And just as a group, I think I seen it. I mean, as a hockey fan, I went to that playoffs, and you could just tell that group was on it. They were confident. I was really enjoying the way they were playing. Like, I think they could have done some real good damage in that playoffs. So, you know, it's unfortunate the way it ended, right? Because man, they were cruising along in that series. That was fun to watch. sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes that's really all it is. And at 17, 18, 19 years old, it's really hard to see that. It's really hard to identify that maybe that's the issue. I wouldn't have known it back then. I bet you if I would have, I think, we maybe could have had a couple better seasons there, right? Because, maybe that was the approach we could have took, or maybe that's what we were missing, right? We kept trying to, move pieces and do things, but, maybe we just needed a little bit of a reset. So, yeah, it was really fun to, go back in the dressing room this year and talk with those guys, because it can be a fragile place, and it can be difficult when you're not winning, like we talked about, right? And I don't think you understand what that can do to just your overall mental state when things are down, right? And how do we get it? So now it's how do we get it? How do we get things turned back up? And I gave them a lot of little tips, things to do. There's lots of little simple things you can do to just kind of help with things. And, is it healthy to sit on your phone, all night, in a pitch black room and not sleep? Like, are you getting it's simple as, are you getting enough sleep? Like, are you setting a routine, a bedtime? What are you doing? Are you journaling at all? Are you writing things down? Are you talking about things? There's a lot of things that teenagers don't do. And if they're educated on doing them, it can help, right? So I gave them a bunch of little tips, and whether they used it or not, who knows? I'm sure a few of them did. I'm sure a few of them didn't. If when I was 19, if somebody told me to journal every night, I probably would have been like, "What are you talking about?" But you know what? I wish I could have worked with someone then. I think it can, in my opinion, it can really change your career, really. And I know there's a lot of guys at the top level that have gone through that. They got a mental coach, and it changed the way they played and the way their career went. So yeah, it was fun to get involved with the group in that way, and I hope I can do it moving forward as my way of giving back for such good years that I had with the program.
This has been a spectacular conversation going all the way back through the years. As we sort of wrap up, usually we leave it open. It's sort of an open mic to pay any respects to anybody that watches these things. They're relatively popular. They're picking up steam. Season ticket holders who watched you through your 4 years and probably still run into you every once in a while. Anybody that sort of helped you get where you are. The last little segment here is yours, the floor.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, all the Viper faithful. I have so many good memories. People that still recognize me in town that I always stop and say hi to. I still see Mike, good old fan. Still see him at Starbucks all the time, and we talk hockey, and what an awesome guy he is. And they've got some great super fans there that are just diehards, and they wouldn't miss a game. And I miss that. That was my one of my favorite things was the fans and the kids too, like the young kids that would bring signs and stuff like that. I always try to make a gesture. That stuff means a lot to guys, and it makes you want to go to the rink, and it makes you want to, feels like what you're doing and all the hard work you're putting in is for something, and you're bringing some joy to some people. So yeah, my years as a Vernon Viper were like so shaping in who I am today. So I owe a lot of respect to everyone in the organization. My family for always supporting me. My Uncle Jim, still he's still at all those games. He'll never miss them. Duncan Ray was such an awesome piece, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to meet that guy and really, I'll never forget the last conversation I had with him when I left the team, and I mean, we both just like pretty much broke down because of how much he did for that team, and how much I appreciated it. And the new ownership I'm starting to get to know, and the coach Jason, he seems awesome, great guy. I hope I get to know them better throughout the years here, because I think they know what it means, and I think they probably got a good idea this year of how much the Vipers mean to the city of Vernon. And I like their approach. They seem like they want to keep this winning thing going, and they want to develop a strong program. And I think he seems like a really intelligent coach, and I think that'll really help. So I hope I can stay well involved with the team, and that way, I can keep paying my respects and giving back to the people around the rink and stuff. Because I still, like, I go to the games, and I still, like, I love walking to the rink. Whether anybody recognizes me or knows me, I seen a Sparrow jersey a few months back at one of the games there. So I was like, oh, I guess I still matter here a little bit. So that was fun to see, because it's just such a cool time in your life when you're playing that. You'll never, for as long as I live, when I walk into Cal Tire Place, I'll have all those memories. So that's the best part about it.
We really appreciate this. Thank you so much, and we'll make sure to have you on. If we get a season going, you'll have to pop up to the broadcast booth as always. Colton, we really appreciate this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Graham. Take care, man.